All right, we ready to go? Yep. So yeah, I'm talking about the P10 panels, which are these fellas here that people are using to build screens out of. So yeah, I thought we'd just talk about the different type of panel specs and how they work, how to build the enclosure to mount them, and the various electrical aspects to it. So what are they? They're basically tiles or panels, and they're used in the commercial billboards you see on like the side of the road. They're very cheap, 512 RGB LEDs for $11 US, or it works out to be like 2 cents an LED. Cheap until you buy lots of them. So yeah, P watt, the number stands for the millimetre pitch between the LED centres. So these are 1 centimetre spacing or 10 mil. So that's how they get their P10 name. They do come in a higher density, so you can get P6, P5, P3, P22 for some of those bigger scoreboard style applications. And on the back there's the connectors, what I believe the Chinese called Hub 75, which is a multiplexed ribbon cable connection. So because it's multiplexed, the way it's driving, these ones are a 1/8 scan, so there's only 2 vertical or 2 horizontal rows running at the same time. They do that so it saves on power consumption and electronics in the back of it. But again, it comes at a cost of brightness. So if you've got something that needs to run in full daylight, your quarter scan or half scan are going to be a lot brighter, because when it's a 1/8, you've only got 2 lines driving at the one time. But for our needs, it's here nor there really. So more panel specs. Are they waterproof? No, not these ones. You can get them in waterproof. What's that? Yeah, you can. You just pay extra. So it's got like a epoxy conformal coating on it. That's right. So you're still got to worry about the back of the panel. So there's no point waterproofing the front and then having that on the other side. So yeah, they come in different pixel types. These ones are your standard RGB all-in-one LED. You'll see some of the larger ones on the side of the road. They're single red, blue and green LEDs. So they've got a higher brightness apparently. But yeah, they're not going to look good in a small density, I don't think. And of course, they do them in single colour for any boring application.
I noticed that Ray doesn't have them, but one of the other suppliers has got RGBWY.
Really?
So it's got white and yellow.
I wonder how they do that.
The RGBs look like they're a standard 5mm LED.
Yep.
The white and yellow sit just above it as an individual LED. So I don't know what the colour of.
Yeah, they must be a different connection too, because there's actually like 2 pins are red and 2 pins are green. So yeah, there must be some proprietary.
But they were $28 for the same size.
Not so interesting then.
No.
Yeah.
I'm going to get one for the hell of it.
Yeah. So they also some of them have a shade sail on the top of it. So if it's in the sun, it's in a shadow to make it look better. That works okay if it's outside. But if you decide to mount it sideways to get fancy, all your shade sails are going to be the wrong way round. Or if you mount it upside down, you're going to run into problems there. And then you also want to double check that the stud pattern matches your brackets. Because I know a couple of people have bought panels not from Ray, and then they thought, oh, we'll just download the 3D template, and they don't line up because they decided to put them in a different spot. So the commercial setup, there's the ones which cost heaps of money. There's various proprietary systems, and they've got their own signalling and management and systems on how they work. But the Chinese ones that Ray sells, from what I can gather, they have a sending card, which is at the PC. So the PC is just taking like the DVI signal out of a monitor, and that card just crops part of the computer screen, and then it sends it across some Cat5 cables, not as network, to a receiving card, which then connects these panels up to it. So yeah, you can see like when the signage application crashes, that's why sometimes you'll see the Windows desktop suddenly appear on the billboard. But how we do it in the Christmas light world, we have the P10s. We use a BeagleBone Black single board computer with a octo-scroller board, which is what they call a cape in BeagleBone talk, which sits on the top, and it's running the PyPlayer software, which we've talked about a little bit already. So the octo-scroller is that thing there. So it's basically got a pin header. It clips onto the top of the BeagleBone, and then it's got 8 outputs, and then each output can have 8 panels connected to it, and it's a open source design. So then your typical setup would look like that. So it's octo-scroller into your first panel, through the panel, to the next one, up to 8 panels per chain. And then these are 5 volt powered too, so don't run 12 volt into them. There's also the octo-scroller that Alan makes, which is a slightly revised version. I used the original ones that Daryl got the circuit boards for last year, but Alan's improved it, so the tracks I think that it's got better spacing, so you can solder it easier rather than bridging the solder across the little via risers on it. Or you can buy it pre-assembled with the real-time clock, which for $30, it's a pretty good deal. So then sequence programming, it's just like a normal pixel matrix. So every LED is going to be channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for your RGB. So yeah, you get quite a few channels. Like that's 1,500 channels just there.
You can't use it on your signature on ACL.
Yeah, yeah, I haven't.
They don't count.
Nah. Well, yeah, because I got 7,400 normal channels and then 38,000 channels just on the screen.
Put them on there.
No.
And then I'm
minus 2 because I use that to trigger it.
and then I'm building another one, which you're about to see. So yeah, astronomical channel count. So yeah, no signatures. Then yeah, the sequencer setup, it's just like doing a pixel grid if you do with the 2812 strip. So yeah, you define your matrix, assign it to universes.
Do they go horizontal, like so 1, then 2?
Yes, yep. Although you can configure it in the BeagleBone software to say like which is the, if you want to start from the bottom right or the bottom left, or start from the top, so you can reverse the orientation.
But it's always horizontal.
Yep. So yeah, before I go any further, you can get because they're running off the BeagleBone or the Falcon PyPlayer, you can configure the PyPlayer to run in bridge mode. So it's going to act like a normal controller. So if you're using Xlights or Vixen and you want to send a E131 packet out, you just send it to the IP of the BeagleBone and it'll go straight to there as if it was a normal Pixelite or J1sys controller. So yeah, I find that that's good for testing, except if you have 25 panels, you're looking at like 77 universes or 77 UDP packets per update, and at 40 frames a second, you're starting to really pump your network traffic. So then you can go to multi-sync mode, which is a bit more efficient to do. So you got your standard PyPlayer running your main show. Your BeagleBone has a separate sequence, or the same sequence, and it's just configured for the panel setup, and it's one packet to run between both of them. And then it's got extra brains in it, so if it's running over Wi-Fi and it drops a couple of packets, it's not going to say, oh, I didn't see that frame number. It'll just keep on going, assuming it's getting it. And if it realises it's out of sync, it'll reframe itself and go from there. So, yeah, that multi-sync also has the other advantage. You don't have to be using the same sequencing software. So I run my normal show with Vixen, except unfortunately Vixen can't handle 38,000 channels in one matrix. So I had to use Xlights. Yeah, I'm hoping for the new version. I haven't got to that yet. But yeah, this is what I did last year. So I had the Xlights sequence just to do the matrix on the BeagleBone. Same file names. So yeah, when I'd play the main show, it would kick off the sequence on the panels, and people on the street thinks that they have no idea. It just all works. So yeah, your channel configuration, it's all tying back to the individual Falcon player. So the Falcon player configuration for P10, basically you need to get some universes in there to begin with. So you're ticking the E131 output box and putting however many universes you need. You don't need to put any addresses in. It's just to get the universe definitions into the PyPlayer. I think it may have been a bit of a hack job in the way it's designed. It wasn't terribly clear, I thought, but hey, it works. So yeah, you get yourself however many universes you need. So then the PyPlayer knows it's got so many thousand channels to work with. Then on the next screen, there's the LED panels tab. And within there, you're defining the layout of how your panels are connected. So if you've got 5 by 5, you might have 5 panels on 5 different outputs. So you're actually saying what the pattern and the order is. So you've got output 1, then panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. Most of the time people will do it sequentially. So you've got your top row, your bottom row. You can get fancy and do non-standard shapes. But whatever you do, when you change it, don't forget to restart it because it won't work. And test it with David AVD's test utility, like you would on normal pixels, because yeah, it'll save a whole heap of hair pulling when it doesn't work, or if you haven't soldered up the octo-scroller properly. So yeah, non-standard shapes are possible. The Falcon Player software wants to see a grid, but you don't have to have a grid of panels, so you can actually leave them out. Which I found was really handy because I plan to put one on my Apex on the roof, but I can't fit 8 panels in, so I'm just leaving the 2 corner ones out. I thought about it. No, it's not going to work because the tracks. I thought about it. Yeah, this is a multiplex, so that's your sort of multiplex chip, and then you got your RGB drivers. Trying to cut it diagonally, it's just not going to work. It's funny you should say that, because yeah, they do make triangular ones, but I never got a response out of Ray. I did see it on one of the Alibaba pages, but yeah, it must be some custom thing. So I just 3D printed some fillers and problem solved. So the frame construction, the proper way to do it is to use the metal frames that bolt together, so you're working on like a grid pattern. They're fairly cheap until you need to post it to Australia. So, well, it was probably reasonable at $60 US, but then you're paying, yeah, 150 in postage, and you're stuck to that shape. And then they are designed so they will butt up to each other if you want to make a longer version. But yeah, that's just ridiculous money. So the way I've done it is just a pine frame with 3D printed brackets. So yeah, we build a box, hell of a lot cheaper than trying to do it the proper way. Using 42mm pine is deep enough, I found, to get the panels mounted up with the brackets and the ribbon cable behind it, but you're not going to have enough room to try and put the octo-scroller or power supplies in there. So that's something to keep in mind when you build it. I like to have everything in one box too, because when you go and move it and set it up, it's less cables to plug in, or less fragile cables that you might end up breaking as it tries to go up a ladder. So that's what the back of my 25 panel setup looks like. I don't know how well it's going to come up on the projector. I went for 25 panels because I needed to carry it in and out each night to hang it in front of my garage doors. So I was sort of limited by weight, because that's about 17, 18 kilos. So yeah, lots of 3D printed brackets, which are all the white bits. You can't really see the wooden frame because it's black. There's some handles built into it just to make it easier to carry. I don't know if you can see up here. So yeah, I was going to put a back panel on it with proper like speaker box handles, but I still haven't put the back on it. But it worked fine straight up against the garage door. It didn't get too wet, and if it rained, it went inside pretty quickly. So, oh yeah, there's some labels. So yeah, beagle bones in the corner, power supply, DC cable distribution. I made all the cables the same length because I was worried about voltage drop and consistency. That's why it looks so messy. But I kept it all even. So I had to have a consistent or an inconsistent fade, however you want it. I don't think it really made much of a difference in the end. But yeah, it was just one of those things I didn't know until I built it.
So you power inject every panel?
Every row was wired separately, so there was a fuse on each row. Because yeah, I'll get to that in a sec, there's a few surprises. And then I also did Ethernet over power, so I had just the 240 volt cable to plug in, because I couldn't get the Wi-Fi USB working on the one I had. So yeah, one power cable. When you bring it in and out each night, you just don't want to have to plug in a network cable and a power cable. So at least it's only an extension lead then. I also did a slight gap around the edge to cover for any carpentry discrepancies. Not that I needed it in the end. But yeah, with wood expanding and contracting too, you got a bit more margin of error. Or if you cut it wrong with your saw blade or something like that. And yeah, I also did 3D printed brackets to stop it flexing because yeah, when you get 5 panels high and you try and lift it up, these things just want to stay on the ground. So yeah, I did some little claws to hold it into position. That's the beauty of having a 3D printer. If you run a problem, you just make a part to get around it. And yeah, there's a close-up of the beagle bone on another 3D printed mount. And I also added a DC current shunt so I could see the power consumption in real time. These little eBay shunt meter things, they're not 100% accurate compared to like doing it on a multimeter, but you'll get an idea. You should be around a certain current. So if it suddenly goes up to like 50 amps, you know you're in trouble or there's something catastrophically wrong. So yeah, that's the framing for my one to go up on the roof. So that's sort of shows the frame, how it's built. So it's just a 42mm pine sideways with a bit of bracing at the back. Painted up just to keep the moisture out of it. And then yeah, 3D printed brackets and more custom 3D printed brackets because I wanted that angle in it.
You got a lot of those stars on.
Yes, that's definitely, they're going to be pixel based. So I'm waiting on more 2812 nodes from eBay to turn up for that one. So, and they'll have a 3D printed lens that goes into it to diffuse it.
How many times are you going to say 3D printed?
I don't know, maybe more. So yeah, the actual power consumption of the panel, it sort of greatly varies depending on whether it's doing full white or completely black. Like I said before, they're 5 volt powered. I think allowing 1.5 amps per panel seems to be reasonable sort of budget. Nobody wants to dispute that. Always over-spec it, I guess, and then you can always tweak the brightness within the PyPlayer code too. So you can, if you're going to take it to a mini, you can jack the power up because it's during the day. Or if it's at night, you might want to even turn the brightness down, which in turn, I found the graphics actually look better with less brightness. The color curves on it's really funny. So yeah, I did some experiments and there's a video on YouTube I did of each brightness level of the same frozen Elsa.
I think you did.
Yeah, that was a while back, a good 6 months ago. I tried it and then upping the power despite having more amperage and whatnot, you didn't really get much out of it, I found. In fact, it probably made it look worse. So 7's the default. I found taking it back to 5 was actually a better thing. So it uses less power, keeps the panels cooler effectively. So some surprises with the power is the power can be backfed through the ribbon connectors. They're not electrically isolated, which then presents a problem if you have a fault with one panel and you unplug the power, it'll be trying to suck the power off its neighbours. So yeah, you could be in for a surprise. Same with the octo scroller. If you power your beagle bone up but don't power your panels, it's going to try and suck the power out of the beagle bone via the cape which could cause all sorts of problems. It's not isolated. That octo-scroller is just a multiplex driver. So, yeah, and of course don't forget to use your beagle bone unit, because it could be a little backdoor if everything starts blowing up. So if you blow your main fuses, it'll then go and try and pull the power out of the beagle bone. DC to DC converters, I think they're they can be a bit of a disaster. If you ask Daryl down in Adelaide, he had them blow up his panels, because I think the quality control, when you start loading them up at like their rated voltage, they say they're rated for 100 watts, but the stability seems to be a bit hit and miss. So, and then the other option is too, if you're running multiple converters to keep under those power limits, you're going to make sure you're isolating the secondary sides. Otherwise, that little regulator is trying to control the 5-volt power, and if it's seeing output from another regulator, it's just going to be like joining normal power supplies. It's just not going to work properly. So front covers, yeah, I'd always cover it in case it rains, or worst case is somebody throws something at it, because it's probably a bit of a target. At least it's going to be a bit easier to clean up. All I did was use the clear tablecloth from Bunnings. It's like 0.5 millimetre thick, and it's stretched over and stapled like an art canvas. It does add a bit of a shine to it, like when you go to take photos, but there's probably not much way around that. I found Perspex, that's another option, but too expensive and adds weight. I need a light panel. And you can also defuse it if you use Lycra or some sort of material too, if you find it's too sharp and you want to blur it up a bit. So I found, despite having all the panels covered, there was no temperature. It was rock cold. So then, yeah, the ribbon cables, when you buy the panels, they'll come with a little short data cable to go to the next one. So it's going to be short enough to get to its nearest neighbour, but the actual run to do between your octo-scroller and the panel itself, you're going to need a longer ribbon cable. So you can either buy those off eBay, or you can make them yourself with an IDC crimp tool. Or if you want to be dodgy, just put them in your vise and squish them together. Oh, or one of those. Yeah, I got one in my bag, so. Yeah, it's just as long as it's an even sort of pressure on it, that's the key to it, I think. So then you're probably wondering is how big do you build it? So it's going to come down to like cost, how heavy it is, if you're going to lug it in and out each night. Because I wanted to take it through my front door, so I didn't want to have something super long that I'm trying to carry around at 11 o'clock at night, making a huge racket or bashing the door frame up. And then obviously the shape of it, if you got like a veranda railing or something, it probably makes sense to size it to it. Any long panel is going to be good for doing text and messages, but video sort of likes the height or the rectangular shape, so it's all a bit of a trade-off. So yeah, and then probably finally is the content. I found you can't really do graphics unless you've got 32 pixels high, unless they're like really simple animation. You want to keep the graphics simple, like photos just don't look good on it. Basic animated GIFs that look absolutely ugly on your computer screen because they're so pixelated come up great on the P10s. And you want high contrast colour, high contrast, like really solid saturation. So we've got like Mr. Lego Man picture there, whereas that's the actual screen capture from the content I used. So that's had filtering run over it so it defines the edges. So it looks pretty awful from a photography perspective on screen, but that comes up better on the panels. If you don't do it, it's just going to look really washed out with, yeah, no contrast. There's a free program called Vidmux that will do the editing and reprocess it. So, yeah, any questions?
When you put your plastic on the front, you heat it up?
No. No, it came from Bunnings on the roll with no creases in it. and then as soon as you take it off the roller, static gets to it, and it like scrunches up. But yeah, once you pull it tight, like if you start in the centre, staple at the top, staple at the bottom, staple at the side in the middle, and then work your way around, you'll be able to pull the creases out of it. On mine, I think I've still got a couple of tiny creases on the side, but nobody sees them, except for you, when you go and look at it, as you do.
So yours is an opaque plastic on the front?
Yep. Yep, it's just clear, there's no diffusing. And yeah, I did the Papagayo in X lights using the images to do the singing faces, which was really popular.
That's 5 by 5, right?
Yep. So yeah, it's 1.6 metres wide by 800 high. Would have been tempting to go like another panel or two wider if I didn't have to move it.
Solar panel brackets.
I've already got my other one up there. So.
The question, is that a dead pixel on the left there?
This one up here is where the strips join, and it's also no, but it's got the two lots of figure 8, two lots of figure 8 gauge car audio cable to run the 5 volt for the roof pixels for the text in the middle, because I didn't want the power supplies on the roof, so I put a 10 metre cable on it and to do 5 volt at 60 amps. It was a
The colourful roof actually gives it a nice sheen. Maybe I should have not coloured it.
Yep. You've got all these screw brackets. There's like 3 rows of them, usually up on my roof there is. So yeah, you can about every that much. It's not that bad.
I know, but it's something in my head. I always get a fear.
Just be careful when it's wet.
3-4 stories. I've had some of the side of those like roofs that are okay.
Any other questions?
Very good, thank you.
All right.
One thing I noticed, this is inside, at Adelaide, Darryl had some panels.
Yep.
He blew up and burned, so he bought some new ones, and there was a difference in width between the same panel and the same stock line in Raywood. And
Yeah, I'd
one was
believe
10,
that.
One was 8. So when you put them side by side and used your mountain brackets, there would have been steps and
Buy
And
extras
he was
up
saying,
front.
yeah, if you're going to build it, buy extras and buy them all in one go.
That's
So
what I
all come out at the same batch.
If you blow a panel up, we'll just replace all of those and use those ones that didn't blow up for something else. I was surprised when I saw them. Yeah, I got 30 panels and I only needed 18.
Yeah, I ordered 36, I think, and I only had one bad out of the box,
Yeah, I've got 2.
which was probably repairable, but yeah, it's sort of you
I've
factor in
actually got
that.
8 plastic over one of mine and one without a cover.
Yep.
So I'm only going to use them this year for the first time.
Yep.
And I'm actually deciding which one to go with, and I think I'm going to go with a clear perspex over the front rather than the opaque one.
Yeah, no, I thought it was okay. You just turn down the brightness if it's too
Yeah,
bright.
I've backed them off one, it looks great on the opaque, but it's a little bit too
Yep.
washed out still without that diffuser in front. So
Yep, even the low resolution, your average Joe on the street thinks, oh, that's a nice plasma TV on your garage. It's like, no, it's more than that. So, yeah. And then am I talking about the pipeline now too?